I was going to start the video with a mention of appliances, but this came on as I was scrolling, and it's a local travel and local interest show. This is about where I live. This is Mandalay, or the Mandalay area. Ain't no women looking like that walking around. Yuza takes a tuk-tuk to travel to a village outside of Mandalay, where she serves traditional Burmese palm wine. Gets drunk, and what happens next? Housework. You're away. Washing dishes. Hey. Okay, enough of that silly foolishness. One more thing to tell you. I'm here in my new house. This is the first essay or report that I am reviewing from my new home. That's right, having a bit of a kind of a midlife crisis. No, I don't know what it is, but I've got this 4-bedroom, 5-bathroom, 4-floor townhouse. You can call it that. That's bigger than any place I've ever lived. Well, apart from my parents' house. But this is just me in this big old house. Anyway, there's a lot of housework involved. So let's take a look at what our candidate had to say. Let's see here. Can I zoom? Can I do that in the? So, dear Joko McKenna, no, just me. Okay, your valuable suggestions would be a great help. You hope so. All right. Well, let's see what have we got here today. Let's go to our file. Which one? Yeah. Okay. So, the charts below show the changes in ownership of electrical appliances and the amount of time. Okay, the changes of ownership and amount of the from before it changes carries through to amount of time spent doing housework in households in one country. 1920 to 1919. It's 100 years. Summarize the information. Okay. These, and then the next sentence you'll find in every task 1. So for those of you who haven't seen my task 1 videos before, I put a lot of importance into that last sentence there. Summarize, because there you find your requirements of the task. Something that you'll find a great deal of in the band descriptors. They talk about this satisfies, or fully satisfies, addresses, partially addresses the requirements of the task. And those would be summarizing, selecting the main features, reporting those main features, and then making comparisons, okay, where relevant. By relevant, we mean about what we're talking about. And you should be talking about the main features. So comparisons should be between main features. And if you don't now, how do you discover the main features? Well, it's not the highest and the lowest. You need to find trends. Okay, now, with a line graph is perfect for that, because a trend is a difference over time. Okay, a consistency, or not necessarily a difference, but a change over time that repeats more than once. Okay, and when you've got 2 line graphs, or two of any graphic, you want to look for ways to compare within the graph, within each one, but perhaps more importantly, between the graphs. Okay, what can you say right off the bat when you compare the top graph and the bottom graph? Trend is upwards, trend is downwards. In fact, if you look a little more closely, you'll see that in the first half of the top graph, the percentage increases rapidly, whereas in the lower graph, it decreases more rapidly than it does in the second half. So you can make comparisons in the differences, one's going up, one's going down, and the similarities, and that they both experience the bigger increase in the first half of the period. Now, gosh, there's so much. What else can we say about this? Well, you want to try to find two main features. Okay, two things that you're going to talk about. When you've got two graphs, the obvious thing to do is to talk about the first graph first, and then the second graph second. That is what most people would try to do, and I suppose it's fine. But what I would see here is I would break this up instead of horizontally in two like that, vertically. Okay. In my first body paragraph, I'm going to talk about the first half of the period. Second body paragraph, I'm going to talk about the second half of the period and compare them. Okay. So, what did our candidate do? Let's take a look at word counter. Here's his report up here. 202 words. Oh, it's a bit long. Not terribly long. If we don't go over on the right. Longest sentence is 42 words. I guarantee you it's not grammatically correct. Well, I can't say that. But 29 words is long. Your sentences are quite long. It's only 7 sentences over 4 paragraphs. Okay. It would take 17 minutes to write this, just writing, not thinking or analyzing, just writing. Might make it. Years later, 4 times. Household, 3 times. Usage, 3 times. Okay, so look out for these words when we go over them. All right, so what do we got? Let's go to our report. You'll see throughout the pink or the orangish red, light red, blue, yellow, and green. These indicate the type of mistake that you're making and what band descriptor it falls under. Okay, so here we go. Okay, here we have it again. So the line graph illustrates electronic appliances and the changes in their ownership as well as the time and okay, it's the same structure. What I mean is that you haven't changed the word order. All you've done is replace the words. That is paraphrasing, but it's weak paraphrasing. Okay? Illustrates for show. That's fine. That's good. I recommend doing that. The changes in ownership of electronic appliances. It does not illustrate electronic appliances. Okay. When I read that, I expect to see some drawings of a refrigerator and a vacuum cleaner. It's an illustration of electronic appliance. It's not that. It's the change. Okay. The graph illustrates illustrates how the ownership rate changes. Not the electronic appliances themselves. So here, the line graph. There's 2 of them. The line graph should be graphs. Illustrate. They're not and changes. During household work. It's not correct use of the word during. And household is in the question, and household work is not a collocation, and not a good collocation. Household work. No, it's called housework. If you can't use housework, then use household chores or domestic chores or various tasks in the home, cleaning and such. It even gives you some examples. It does say housework, right? Yeah, housework. Housework is a thing. Household work is not. In a country, I'll just leave that out. From 1920 to 2019. Same as the question. That's so easily paraphrased. It's 100 years. It's exactly 100 years. It's not 100. If it was 1920 to 2020, it would be 101 years, because the world doesn't start at 0. Anyway, it's 100 years. Okay, now here we go. Most important part is the overview. Although the usage of electrical appliances, just repeating the question again, washing machine, refrigerator, and vacuum cleaner. Why is vacuum cleaner capitalized? Was limited in the initial 40 years. Their usage. Don't use the same words in a sentence. 2 words. Like that. Okay, no. Their usage increased significantly with the passage of time. Well, okay, I like passage of time, that's good. But limited is an opinion. It is. It wasn't limited to the folks back then. You know, wow, we got this great new thing called the washing machine. 40% of the homes had them. No one had refrigerators because they hadn't been invented yet. So it didn't seem limited. Anyway, limited is judgmental. And there's so many other ways, you know, and what you're doing is you're saying it was low and then it was high. You know, why not describe the change in your overview? When I look at that, I see, overall, it can be seen that the percentage of homes with these domestic appliances increased rapidly in the first part and leveled off to a steady increase in the second half, if you want to say it that way. Okay. Usage. In contrast, it's by contrast. The number of hours spent in household. There it is again. Household works. It was singular before, now it's plural. It was very high. Total opinion. Entirely subjective. In the beginning years, and decreased later. Beginning you use with like stories. You know, how does the story begin? And it's right at the initial, but not the beginning years, the early years. And decreased later. It was decreasing the whole time. And it wasn't necessarily very high. And you did say by contrast, in contrast. So that's a comparison. Good. All right. So you have, I believe, identified the main features. One goes up, one goes down. You could have put it a lot more succinctly. And again, you're trying to summarize. But you did identify the main features. So that's good. It would be at least, it could be a 7 when it comes to task response, task achievement. I don't like the use of although there. Okay. Interestingly, now somebody, Markar, was, who's that handsome guy? Jay, or somebody said you should use interestingly. It's been in some of the books for a long time. That is quite definitely an opinion. Interestingly. According to who? Usage. There's usage a third time. Why not use? Okay, or presence. You don't use, refrigerators don't really get used, they just sit there. Jumped from 0 to 1920 to approximately 52%. Approximately half. You can't be approximately 52%, because 52 is a very specific number. Odd. Jumped from in the next 20 years. 20 years later. And it kept on increasing further. Okay, now, what I find interesting is that the ownership of refrigerators went from 0 to 90 in 40 years. That's a lot more interesting than 0 to 52, and then kept on increasing kind of vaguely. You don't have to look at each increment as a whole. You should always be looking in task 1 for ways to combine things, combining those 20-year periods into 40-year periods. 0 to 90, more significant and more interesting than 0 to 52. Is that 52? Looks more like 55 to me. Anyway, slightly more than half would be a better way to put it. With a slight bend in 1960. That means nothing. Slight bend. Do not describe the shapes you're looking at. Describe the reality that they represent. Okay. Slight bend. Then a semicolon with a however. However, you're missing a subject here. If you're going to use a semicolon, you are now have an entirely independent sentence, and would, however, increased later be a standalone sentence? No. Increased later and reached 100% in 1980. By 1980. And remained unchanged later. Well, then don't mention it. Once it's at 100%, it's 100%. While Vacuum cleaner. Okay. Refrigerators is accurate. Okay, but when you want to use this singular to describe a class of objects, a bunch of them, you'd use the, particularly with appliances. The refrigerator was invented. We spend too much time watching the TV, well, we wouldn't say the TV, but the television. The vacuum cleaner actually goes here. While the vacuum cleaner was at increasing trend from 1920 to 1960, a slight up and down changes. No. Fluctuations. Been noticed. Been is not, has been, was noticed. Noticed. Who noticed it? In the use of the washing machine. And there, what is there in this instance? You've mentioned two things. Okay, not every sentence needs to be a compound sentence. All right, while, yeah, during, anyway, not everything needs to be a complex sentence like that. And there, it's unclear what there, okay, and there, you mean the washing machine and the vacuum cleaner was equal in the year 1960. Okay. I don't get a sense of the connection there. Up and down movement. Well, there was a slight dip, but the overall trend has been upwards. No mention that, by dividing it into half periods, you could have identified that the first half, everything went up quickly. Or that the one that was the lowest is now the highest. Or the one that was the highest is now the lowest. That's another one thing you point out about that graph. And then the second one, very simple, a steady downward increase, leveling off in the second half. The number of hours per week spent, is that in the question? The amount of time. Okay, good. Oh, but yes, it is. It's considered to be in the question because it's written on the graph. The number of hours per week. Number of hours per week. You're repeating what's in the graph. It's just as bad as repeating what's in the question. There's household work again. It's a very weak sentence. And it decreased to almost half in the year 1940 with 25%. Okay, you're wrong in two regards here. When you get details wrong, that's a big mistake. Because when you look at 1940, it's at 35%. It's not 25%. And that's not, and 35 is not almost half. So that's wrong. It's 35. Now, you could have, once again, have gone two time periods. Fell from 50, fell by, what would be the percentage? 60%. 50 is half of 100. Went from 50 to 20. That's 30 times 2, 60%. It would have been a big difference. Later in the years 1980, it was the same with approximately 12% and was 10% in 2019. That's awkward. That's a very incoherent finish there. It doesn't, describe the trends, not the numbers. You do have to include some details, but it fell rapidly and then leveled off. That would be great. Okay. The number of hours conversely mirrored. There we go. There was a inverse relationship between the two graphs. There's other good words you can use. So stop repeating the same words. Don't try to hit a home run with every sentence in terms of a strange structure, because you could confuse people. Look for trends and the big picture. Combine data. Look for ways to bring data together. Look at the beginning and the end. 50 hours to 10 hours. Okay? Beginning, over the 100-year period, the average amount of time spent in a household doing domestic chores fell from 50 to 10. A drop of 80%. Okay? And they are looking for words like halves and thirds and portions of the whole. What else can I say? Oh yeah, you know, there was a little. It's a little trick. This is tips and trick about the first line of paragraph 1. When I look at this, I don't see any relative clauses. A relative clause is it goes on the end of one part of a sentence. It begins with which or where, when, to describe a noun. So it relates to a noun. And there's none. And this is something you need to have. And here's a quick way to guarantee you'll have a relative clause is you start your report with a relative clause like this. Okay, overall, yeah, the line graph. Okay. Ta-da! Okay. Ta-da! Okay, now I've connected the two topics. Okay, there we are.